Duran, and I am the Chief of the Secretariat for the Inter-American Committee on Ports. And on behalf of the General Secretariat of the Organization of American States, I'd like to bid you welcome to the first Maritime Safety Workshop. Ambassadors, alternate representatives of the OES member countries to the permanent missions, representatives of the U.S. government agencies, representatives of civil society organizations, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for coming. I especially want to welcome and thank for your visit the representatives of the port authorities of 20 OES member countries present here today. And if you allow me, I think it's worthwhile to list them. And we have Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Bolivia, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Grenada, Haiti, Jamaica, Mexico, Peru, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the United States. Thank you all very much for making the trip and making the effort to be here. We thank you very much and welcome you again. Before we start, I wanted to quickly remind you about the context in which this workshop is held in, and the responsibilities, the three main responsibilities of the Inter-American Committee of Ports, and from now on I'll just say CIP or SIP for its Spanish acronym, are threefold. On the first hand, we have the responsibility of promoting the political dialogue at the highest level between port authorities of the member countries. Second to that, technical assistance to when a country requires it and requests it. And last but not least, capacity building. And this workshop is undertaking under this latter area in the hopes of strengthening the capabilities of OES member countries in this opportunity in the issue of maritime safety. With that in mind, the Secretariat of the SIP and the Office of International Activities of the U.S. Maritime Administration, with the financial support of the United States Department of State, have put together this workshop for you all. I'm sure that we'll have a very productive 2.5 days. We have endeavored to have the participation of highest level speakers and experts, and that would hopefully set the basis for a very stimulating dialogue. Anyhow, well, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Executive Secretary for Integral Development of the Organization of American States, Ms. Sherry Tross.
Thank you, Jorge, and thank you all for joining us today. Of course, let me first recognize at my right Mr. Paul Janikin, or Chip, as everybody tells me he likes to be called, the Acting Administrator for U.S. MARAD. Delegates present at today's meeting. It is always a pleasure for us here at the Organization of American States to be able to organize and implement programs that bring together authorities from the 34 active member states of the organization to share experiences, to share knowledge, to find out where the areas of concern are, and find how together we can perhaps come up with solutions to the challenges that face us all. For today's particular program, it is important, I think, to mention here at the outset that following the theme of President Obama's April 2009 speech at the Summit of the Americas in Trinidad and Tobago, and the subsequent Caribbean Basin Security Initiative Partnership launched in May 2010 to help develop the ability of the Caribbean to address common and related challenges, the issues of safety and security capacity building for us has become a main priority. And this is particularly important as we look at what's happening across the world and in our own region. Many of you here have taken part in workshops that we've done before. Some of the faces are quite familiar. Some of the faces that I was looking for this morning are not here, but I certainly have received greetings from many people who for one reason or another, couldn't be here, but I've sent representatives. What this tells me, the consistency of the participation, is that you find what we do to be important, and that the knowledge that each of you bring to this particular workshop and to everything that we do together adds value to what you do in your own countries, at your own port authorities. And together, we find ways to complement what we do to ensure that we have the safety and security measures that are absolutely necessary. Now, for us here at the OAS, and in my particular capacity as Executive Secretary of Integral Development, we look at this whole issue in a very broad way. We have in my area human development and education, labor and so on. We have economic and social development, and we have sustainable development. And we're looking at all of the different ways in which we can help build institutional and human capacity in countries. We're looking at ways in which we can help orient public policy to make sure that we have conducive conditions that can support the various development initiatives and programs that we do. Now, that's at one level, at the policy level and at the dialogue level. But we also need to have the very practical, technical capacity to be able to do a lot of the things that we talk about. And so for us, from the development perspective, what the Inter-American Committee on Ports does to be able to provide that background infrastructure and support for all of the different programs we do in trade and economic development is absolutely essential. 18 months ago, when I took this position, the Inter-American Committee on Ports hadn't had a chief for a little bit. It was sort of going through a period of transition. And so I sort of looked around and said, this particular period of time is too important for us not to have dynamic leadership. And so I decided to appoint the good Jorge Duran here to head up the Inter-American Committee on Ports, and it's been an excellent decision, because I think all of you recognize that there has been a new dynamism, a new momentum with the Inter-American Committee of Ports over the last several months, and we want to make sure that that continues. Now, the development of a safe, sustainable, and competitive maritime and port sector in the Americas has, yes, an impact on the trade and socioeconomic development of OAS member states. But we also believe that it is a prerequisite for social inclusion in many of the mainstream activities that we do. The topic of maritime safety is a cross-cutting theme that affects all maritime and port endeavors, to be sure. It is vital also for the protection of workers in both ports and ships in the loading and offloading of goods, but also for those in related industries. A few weeks ago, I was in Barbados, and we launched there something called the Sustainable Destinations Alliance. And we did that together with some private sector people, including Royal Caribbean. Now, why? Because as much as we want to ensure that we have economic progress, we also want to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable. And we want to make sure that communities are integrally involved in what we do. Having a sense of buy-in across the board is now part and parcel of everything we do. We don't just come in and do kind of a top-down approach. We reach out to the communities and we try to get from them a sense of place, because very often the solutions to the challenges that are facing us already reside in the communities, and with a little bit of work, some training, some capacity building, some resources, some accompaniment, we very often can scale up and find that we have something that can actually last and is durable. So, I won't take more of your time because we have the good Mr. Janikin here, and he's our keynote, and we certainly want to hear from him. But let me take this opportunity simply to say that coming together for this particular workshop on maritime safety is an opportunity that we should take advantage of. We don't want this to be a one-off. Already, Jorge and his team have been thinking about additional activities and programs that we can do. But more importantly for us is to hear from you how we can help. We have great ideas, but the great ideas might not necessarily always coincide with your priorities. So please utilize this opportunity to learn from each other, but also to inform us and to advise us so that what we do really does bring value added. In saying that, let me also utilize this opportunity to thank the U.S. MARAD and the U.S. Permanent Mission of the U.S. for helping to co-sponsor and organize this event. And of course, our colleagues here at the OAS. I will be with you for some part of the morning, and then I have to run off to New York for another activity that we're doing on financial inclusion. Again, talking about capacity building and making sure that all the different players come together to find ways that are actually mutually sustaining and sustainable. So thank you all and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And before I turn the floor over to Administrator Janikin, I wanted to reiterate and underscore a point made by Secretary Truss, and that is that while we are here and we have put up for you a wonderful array of speakers and issues that we believe are of importance to you all, the feedback that we get from you during the sessions is very, very important. I urge you to take advantage of the question and answer period after each presentation to really get the most out of the speakers that we have here today. And not only that, but also, as Secretary Truss said, give us your ideas of what you think we should be doing in order to strengthen your capabilities. Anyway, with that said, Administrator Janikin, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Secretary Truss, thank you for those opening remarks. And also, Jorge, congratulations on your appointment to the Inter-American Committee on Ports. Your energy is certainly welcome, and we look forward and we wish you luck, and the Maritime Administration will continue to support your endeavors as you reinvigorate the CIP. On behalf of Secretary Anthony Fox, the Department of Transportation, and the Maritime Administration, I'd like to thank the Organization of American States for the invitation to speak this morning. For 125 years, OAS has succeeded at strengthening the collaboration of the 35 member states and has given voice to vital initiatives that affect millions and millions of people. And it's no small feat, especially in today's globalized world, and I have great respect for the OIS, and I'm honored to be co-sponsoring this first Maritime Safety Workshop. I'm also pleased that the Maritime Administration's Office of International Activities, and they're shown on the back row there, they've been able to assist the OAS mission, serving on the executive board of the CIP and serving as chair of the Port Security and Safety Technical Advisory Group. This has already been a very productive collaboration, and I think our future together is very promising. As you are all aware, the ferry seawall that capsized off the southern coast of South Korea has given a sense of urgency to this particular workshop. And while that tragedy deserves further discussion and analysis, we can't avoid and forget what the bigger picture is. As a leading international mode of transportation, the maritime community is not immune from either accidents or tragedies. We're all too familiar with the Prestige, the Deepwater Horizon, the Costa Concordia, the Carnival Triumph, as well as many others. And while there are different causes from each of these events, whether it be from increased hazard due to rough seas, to poor mechanical maintenance, and also to human error, they all have one thing in common. Each of them were preventable. A healthy maritime safety culture and sufficient operational safety rules and standards could have prevented these and many other accidents, and the loss of life is regrettable. OAS understands that. That's why we've all gathered here today to contribute to a safe, secure, and environmentally public-friendly maritime mode, as Secretary Tross pointed out in her opening remarks. And just as each OAS member country is advancing its own initiatives to make this a reality, the Maritime Administration, or MARAD, is also working to foster a maritime safety culture. MARAD has an Office of Safety. It's dedicated to this very effort. It's the mission and responsibility of that office to oversee agency matters related to maritime industry safety and maritime safety compliance. To execute this task, that safety office prepares and reviews position papers and proposed regulations, manages programmatic technology and assessments, supports naval architecture and marine engineering studies, and identifies and promotes the transfer of advanced technologies in the maritime field. And perhaps more importantly, our Office of Safety maintains active collaboration with government and private sector groups that are engaged in developing state-of-the-art improvements in maritime safety, including best management practices, procedures, and technologies. Through our involvement with organizations like the Ship Structure Committee and the Human Factors Coordinating Committee, the Maritime Administration lends support to a wide range of crucial maritime safety issues, including engineering safety and maintenance, ship recycling, vessel stability and structural soundness, shipyard and marine terminal safety, and much, much more. The Maritime Administration has accomplished these in groups, in particular with the Ship Operations Cooperative Program, or SOCP. The Maritime Administration recently funded and provided industry knowledge for the development of 4 safety films produced on DVD in partnership with the SOCP. One provides a contemporary overview of maritime safety culture. Another, electrical and line handling safety. Both of those were developed and originated in response to incidences that resulted in fatalities, and they were reported by SOCP members. The Maritime Administration SOCP partnership also produced an anti-piracy awareness and response technique video that SOCP provided to dozens of U.S. maritime stakeholders. That one was very well received. Our 4th information film tackles cyber security awareness and reaction training, including valuable considerations for curbing social media usage, particularly the types of information that crews should not produce or put onto the internet. On the regulatory front, the Maritime Administration understands that despite being well-intentioned, growing maritime regulations can be overwhelming for some of our stakeholders. And that's why our Office of Safety coordinates the Maritime Administration's participation in developing national and international standards with other federal agents, including the U.S. Coast Guard and the Occupation Safety and Health Administration, otherwise known as OSHA. By aligning MARAD's efforts with other agencies, we can capitalize on the opportunities to enhance the efficiency and safety of the maritime industry without impeding its operations. The Maritime Administration staff frequently contributes to discussions regarding the development of needed regulations, frameworks, and international technical maritime standards with organizations that include the International Maritime Organization Maritime Safety Committee, the Organization for Standardization, or ISO, and the American Society for Testing and Materials. Through these relations, the Maritime Administration representation to commercial maritime interests and focuses on inefficiencies in our industry. In one instance, the Maritime Administration and our industry partners saw that everyone was collecting maritime safety data in different formats, which makes it difficult to share safety information together. It performs safety benchmarking and also to identify critical safety rules. We saw the obvious need for the collection and reporting standards to be changed, and together with the industry, we're taking action. With the American Society for Testing and Materials, the Maritime Administration is helping cultivate 2 standards develop initiatives for incident reporting and near-miss reporting. These standards will provide guidance and procedures for collective incident and near-miss information, define safety development elements for collection, and identify safety performance metrics. These will be incredibly valuable tools for our industry in promoting and advancing maritime safety. Safety is a top priority for the U.S. Department of Transportation, and maritime safety is especially so for the Maritime Administration. So as you can tell by these remarks, MARAD is not doing it alone. Many of our safety initiatives come out of industry partnerships and collaborations, and this accomplishes many things. It puts an end to the insular thinking that can sometimes happen within agencies or within governments for that matter. It also opens our eyes to different points of view and keeps us updated on what our stakeholders are thinking. The Maritime Administration understands that it has a shared commitment to waterborne transportation safety, and that by working with others, we can accomplish more towards the shared goal than we could ever accomplish by ourselves or alone. That's what I like the thought I'd leave to you today. Together, OAS member states can make much larger strides towards safe maritime environment. Our world is developing. The Western Hemisphere countries may one day share a regional transportation platform, and there's plenty of evidence for that. President Obama has repeatedly emphasized with our southern partners that the Department of Transportation has made certain Latin American countries priority countries as part of the U.S. National Strategic Freight Plan. So it's just as likely that our future is just that. It's our future, and it's a shared future, and it's in our best interest for it to be a future with regional solidarity and strengthened hemispheric cooperation. Maritime safety influences the lives of citizens of all of our countries. It's a shared value that should always come before competing goals and demands. And so whether we speak English, Spanish, or Portuguese, we all utilize waterborne transportation, and as such, we should continue working together through efforts like the CIP to develop the safest maritime environment possible. I look forward to participation today, and thank you for the opportunity to make remarks.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participation and your support, Chip. And as both speakers before me have mentioned, this is an issue that is cross-cutting, that affects everyone and everything, and from the OSHA's responsibility of safe working conditions for the workers to port operations, cranes, equipment, procedures, and this is in the shipping part of it. But if we extend this to the cruise line and the safety protocols for food, for waste disposal, and if we move a little farther offshore and think about the possibilities of oil platforms and a natural disaster there, then we have a lose proposition where there's human losses, there's economic losses, and there's environmental degradation and loss as well. And in the hopes of preventing that, every one of our countries represented here today has safety policies and directives and guidelines. Not with the hopes of ameliorating a situation, but perhaps more importantly, to prevent a situation from occurring. And with the hopes of that, is that we have this seminar here with the help of Marad, structured in such a way that we'll have presentations covering everything we could think of that would be interesting to you, from Dr. Levinson's introductory chat from MIT to representatives of several U.S. agencies, the Coast Guard, FEMSA, National Transportation Safety Board, Department of Interior, just to name a few, as well as, and I have to underscore this, the participation of you in this seminar. Will have participation from lecturers from Argentina, from Mexico, from Bolivia, perhaps, and of course from the Caribbean countries represented here today. Most of you have selected to present on Wednesday morning, and we're very, very interested in that because it is a give and give so that we can have a win-win situation. I think that we can all learn from each other, and that's the objective of this seminar, which will cover, or this workshop, which will cover several issues. So thank you very much. Before we move on to the next part of our program, I'd like to just make a couple of house cleaning or housekeeping announcements rather. We will have a permanent coffee station outside the room for those of us who have to have a cup of coffee constantly. Just feel free to go get it and come back, and so that the coffee breaks themselves are not an event. and are not that lengthy. They'll just be out there. Now, after this session is over, we will ask all of you to please come with us over here, either by the steps or by the steps, we agreed? On the steps outside here, so we can take a group picture of the inaugural people present at this ceremony. And after that, we'll have a cup of coffee and then come back into the room for the first session. And I think since we are a little bit ahead of time, we might actually start early. Yes, Carlene. Of course, we encourage, and again, this is Carlene Lidenklaus, everybody from NAMEPA, from the North American Marine Environmental Protection Association. Yes.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our introductory.
Hold on. I'm sorry, 1 second.
You've already created an
1
excellent
second,
product.
please. I'm sorry.
I thought oh, you want to hear that again? Well, first I'll say gracias. No, thank you very much for your comments and your remarks this morning. And I was really intrigued by the roster of products that MARITIME has put together with SOCP. And I was questioning whether they would be available to delegates or available publicly, and if there's a possibility of perhaps getting translations for them, because nobody in today's day and age has the resources to reinvent the wheel. And if we can use existing fine products that you've created, I think that would be outstanding. And so I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
Thank you for the question, Carlene. And my representative for SOCP is Todd Ripley there in the back. I will tell you that SOCP provides those to any stakeholder who asks. They are an English product. We had not thought about translating it, but I will let Todd comment, if you'd like, Todd, just to answer that question more fully. But we do share those with everybody who asks.
Right, they're available on the website. Thank you. They're available on the SOCP website, www.socp.us. And actually, I have a brochure here of the products and a brochure on SOCP if anybody's interested. So I'll lay them out, and that'll be part of my presentation after lunch. So yes, and I think the translation piece is that would be tied with dollars to do the translation. It would be a costly item for SOCP, and we'd have to look for funding to accomplish that. But that would be something we'd be interested in, or SOCP would be interested in if funding were available.
I will actually ask Jorge. Now, I understand this was a NAMEPA product that was actually translated into Spanish. And so if there were a way that we could work with CIP and SOCP, I'd be happy to see if there's a way that we can partner together to be able to help provide some of those products, because they are very good. And if nothing else, to be able to put Spanish subtitles perhaps on it, that may be a way to be able to do it. I just don't know how difficult or how costly that would be.
Thank you both. In fact, yes, some of you, if you look, excuse me, Sherry, at this brochure, this is one of two parts. There's a poster that goes along with it. It is in your folders, as a matter of fact, and the people who are Spanish speakers should have it in Spanish. Please correct me if I am wrong. And this is indeed, Chip, something that we did with Carlene from NAMEPA, and we'd be happy, absolutely happy to explore that and be able to assist in any way that we can. Absolutely.
That would be great, Jorge. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted you to know that this workshop is being webcasted throughout the hemisphere. You should have gotten a webcast link or address. If you do not have it and would care to have it, so you can pass it along, you can ask any of the SIP secretariat. Ms. Mona Swoboda is back there. Mona, stand up so people can see you. Mona, who you all know, has been instrumental in the organization of this. Actually, I want to recognize her work and support. Every person that's here at some point has dealt with Mona for one aspect or other. So she'll be able to provide you with the link for the webcast. And I had a question from a viewer that just came to my phone regarding the question is, how does this workshop sets itself with the priorities of the Inter-American Port Committee? And I think it's an excellent question. And the answer to that is very succinct and quickly done. The CIP, the members, the 34 member countries of the OE has approved a document last year in Cartagena, Colombia, called the Plan of Action of Cartagena. In it, they outline a 1 to 2 year plan of port development in 6 priority areas. And each one of these priority areas is it makes up a TAG, or Technical Advisory Group. And each one of these tags is presided or chaired by a country. And these are competitiveness, logistics, and innovation, chaired by Mexico. Again, these are the SIP priorities and how this workshop fits in that. Competitive logistics and innovation by Mexico. Sustainable port operation and environmental protection, chaired by Venezuela. Legislation and regulation, chaired by Uruguay. Women in ports and corporate social responsibility, chaired by Panama. Tourism, inland ports and services to ships, chaired by Argentina. And last but not least, port security and protection, chaired by the United States through MARAD. And this is why we are here, because this the issue of safety and security responds to a priority set by the member states to the SIP, and this workshop is organized within that context. So hopefully that viewer got his or her answer. I'm not sure, but if please, any more questions? We have the floor is open for questions or comments at this point. Yes, sir. Back there, if we could have a microphone for. I don't know if I can be heard. Maybe it's coming. It's coming. It sounds great.
Yes, Carlene reminds me that I'm on the NMEPA board, and I'm Duncan Smith, here from Washington, D.C., and thank you for the presentations. One of the things that we've been struggling with in the maritime industry is getting the public educated on the role of maritime, and today you're focused on ports and things like that, but we know in America people don't know where their stuff comes from and how they get it, but there's a high percentage that's moved by ship, inland, coastal, international, and it's the cheapest way to move something. Yet we have this lack of knowledge in the public. So is there an effort by this organization to have an educational side of the general public to make them aware of the value of the maritime community?
Duncan, thank you for that question. The answer is the Maritime Administration does have an advocacy responsibility for the U.S. maritime, primarily the U.S. merchant marine, but also the maritime industry. The challenge that we have, obviously, is a funding stream. We are actually working right now on a script to do exactly that, to identify, to be able to put on social media that will allow us to do that. We're not going to advertise necessarily on TV or print or anywhere else because that is costly, but the social media looks like our best avenue, so we're actually going to exercise that. The one thing that I will tell you as we look more broadly at how to be able to do that, I think everybody in this room understands that on each and every day, 75% of the world's gross domestic product is in the tank of a ship, in the hold of a ship, or in a container on a ship moving from one point to another. That is not necessarily, that's lost on not only the U.S. population, but I think the population writ large. 80% of the world's population lives within 150 miles of a major coastline, and we have got to be able to make that. And in fact, in the United States, as you know, 95% of everything comes via the water. And so we need to make sure that that is widely recognized. And so we're actually working in that direction to be able to help that. But it's a script. I can talk to you offline in terms of what the script, but it's going to be what would happen if you did not have the maritime industry and bringing products to this country. And so you can have the visualization from that.
To complement that a little bit, one of the functions of this secretariat is actually dissemination of port or maritime related information to the public at large. And not only do 75% of everything that you're wearing and eating came on a ship, but we are now actually addressing the next point, which is a lot of ports in the region have made heavy investments in becoming more efficient, logistically speaking, and efficient. And so now they're great at offloading and loading containers, but then the containers sit there because you need to have an efficient multimodal transportation system past that in order to get the goods to the hinterland. And with the expansion of the Panama Canal, the imminent expansion, whenever it does happen, a lot of countries in the region, especially in the Caribbean Basin and the north part of South America, are gearing up to that and trying to prepare for that. For instance, Colombia has made heavy investments in the river, the Magdalena River, that flows from Cartagena to the hinterland. And this is one of the issues that the committee has now incorporated as a mainstream issue, is the area, the inland ports, and the importance of that because of the economies of scale and because of that. Now, we wish that we would have a wider dissemination network or casting network, if you will, but any help that we can get on that, we welcome.
Well, let me say on that a couple of things. First, I mean, just looking around our room today, we see a snapshot of the Americas. We have sort of our large developed countries and we have the smaller developing countries. Now, in the United States, as the good gentleman from NAMIPA mentioned, most people don't really think about where the goods come from, and we produce a lot here as well. For most of our developing countries, we're huge importers. And so the populations are very much aware that everything that they're using is coming from somewhere. So there's already a certain degree of acknowledgement and knowledge about that. Now, the back end of what goes into this obviously is not necessarily very well known, but that's where working with our port authorities and working with our government ministries comes into play. Now, here at the OIS, as well as throughout the inter-American system, you are seeing that there's a movement towards putting more emphasis on infrastructure. At the Inter-American Development Bank, for example, following the 2012 Summit of the Americas in Cartagena, where our heads of state and government identified infrastructure development as one of the key things that's absolutely necessary for development and competitiveness going forward, they have identified streams of funding specifically for infrastructure, not just port, I mean the whole intermodal, but definitely that's a main part of it. And there is a public awareness component of that. Now, the Inter-American Committee on Ports, again, can be a partner in terms of accompanying you in helping to disseminate information. But we need to figure out, because looking across the Americas, at different points and for different countries, there might be different kinds of streams of information that are needed. And the way we disseminate information is different. In some countries, for example, because we do a lot of public advocacy and education, we know that in some areas, okay, we do social media, and that works tremendously well. We know in some areas we're still using radio for a lot because that's where people pay attention and listen. So it's also getting a sense from the different countries how we can be most effective in terms of putting out the information and providing the information that people really need. So again, bottom line is, we have differences in our countries, but we have common problems. But at the end of the day, what you give to us helps us in terms of what we can then put out there so we can tailor and customize the information going out to make it of most use to most people. Oh, actually, before you do that, let me just throw something else out here, because one of the things we do really well here at the OIS, we do a lot of courses online in a number of different areas. And so if there was something that this group decided that you wanted to do in terms of port education, that is certainly something we could take into consideration and develop and make that available through the Portal of the Americas, through the various modalities that we have that are already known, established, branded, and people come there and actually utilize those spaces for education and for exchange of information. So if this is something coming out of this meeting that you might want to actually develop, we'd be more than happy to do it with you.
Well, you can add clairvoyancy to your list of accomplishments, because that was essentially what I was going to ask in terms of, are there any constraints to collaborations along those lines of public education? It sounds as though there aren't any.
We're very much open. I like to tell people that one of the things that the OIS has been doing for more than 60 years is in the field of education, something about which I feel very passionately, and you'll hear in most of my speeches, maybe not so much today. I talk about that a lot. We've done this through very traditional methods for a long time, but now it's much more innovative, and we're using all the different technologies and modalities available, including through mobile technologies, to bring information to people. So there's the push aspect that we have, but there's also a pull aspect. So it depends on what we identify as being the most effective for a particular subject matter, and identifying where the constituencies are that might need this, and then being able to do this in a way that makes sense. So certainly for me, I think this is something that we'd be more than willing to consider. But of course, content is always important, so we have to make sure that we have the right experts and we're doing this well so that we're actually adding value.
Thank you. On that issue of distance education, the committee, the CIP, also has as one of its responsibilities for, I believe, the end of this year, 2014, to produce at least one distance online course on any of the 6 priorities I read. And there it'll be at least one. It doesn't mean we can't do more than one. But I think that as you know, the chips begin to fall, this issue of safety and perhaps the issue of environment are the ones that are mostly, shall I say, they have a wider audience, and I think we're going to go and develop those. So I'll be coming to you for help later on. All right, thank you very much. Again, Chip, thank you very much, and Murad, Andrew, and Tony, thank you very, very much for your help. I don't see anybody from the U.S. mission, but I'd like to thank them anyways. If I could pray that you follow me up these steps, and we're going to go outside the building to just in front where it says the Organization of American States, sorry, outside for the group picture. And we usually do this football style, so some of the gentlemen will have to kneel and get down there as in with a soccer ball, and the ladies in the back. And this we'll use for branding the workshop. There was another question about the presentations. How can you get your hands on the presentations that we will give throughout the 2-day seminar? There are 2 ways to do this. These presentations, once we have the permission from the presenters, we will upload them to our website where you can download a PDF. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, throughout this couple of days, you can give us a flash drive. And again, once we have everybody's permission, we'd be happy to copy the presentations onto your flash drive. If anybody has any other questions as far as housekeeping, please let me know. So without further ado, let's go out there. After that, we'll on the way back, we'll get a cup of coffee and jump back into the room for Dr. Levinson's presentation. Thank you.